Good morning, everybody. We just started the webinar, and so as folks trickle in, we'll get started shortly to be respectful of time. All right. So why don't we get started? We see a lot of folks who have joined the webinar. Thank you everybody so much for joining. My name is Jessica Lobadan. I'm the Community Services Manager. We'll do introductions in a moment, but first I'm gonna have our colleague Amy Cole-Bloom share the PowerPoint screen. Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining the Bidders Conference for fiscal year 23-24 funding through the City of Hayward Community Services Division Community Agency funding process. A quick agenda for today. First, we will do introductions. We'll provide an overview of the community agency funding. You'll eventually start to hear us say CAF as the abbreviation, the CAF process. Review financial considerations and eligibility. Receive an application overview, updates, and submission timeline. We'll have time for technical assistance and Q&A as well. Just as a point of reference, this webinar is being recorded. It will be posted to the website, and we will also publish questions that are asked at the end of this webinar for reference. So as I mentioned, my name is Jessica Lobadan. I'm the Community Services Manager. It's so great to see so many participants. So far, we have 72 folks in the audience. Thank you all so much for joining, and I'll hand it over to the rest of the team. Carol, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carol Lee. I'm an analyst here with the Community Services Division, and historically in the past, I've provided support to the public services agencies. I'm very excited to virtually see everyone this morning.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amy Cole-Bloom. I'm also a management analyst with the team, and I primarily work with our infrastructure and economic development award recipients through CDBG. Rick?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rick Rivera, and I am also a management analyst with the Community Services Division, and I will primarily be handling applications for special events.
Hello, I'm Alejandro Mora. I'm a community program specialist, and I work with social services, arts and music, and paratransit agencies for the most part.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We also wanted to introduce Evelyn Oliveira. She is our senior secretary. She sends out a lot of communications as it relates to contracting. And she's also present at all of the Community Services Commission meetings. So you may see her if you ever join those.
Great. So I actually will now provide a quick summary and overview of the community agency funding process. We recognize this year that there's a lot of new applicants, and so we'll kind of go step by step. And of course, if you have questions, we're happy to answer that, as well as letting you know that the RFP is available online. And so a lot of your questions may be answered in the materials there. But I'll start by just saying that the community agency funding process is something that the city hosts annually. It is to get funding out, both community development, block grant funding, and then general fund program funding out into the community. I do want to note that this funding is subject to availability. This is a highly competitive process, and unfortunately, funding is not guaranteed, nor is it guaranteed at the levels maybe that it's been awarded in the past. This year, the categories for applications, we have 2 different applications. I'll start there. But the first one is a common application. Most of you who have applied before is going to be quite familiar with this application. You'll notice that maybe some of the questions have shifted around a bit, but the content is pretty much the same as last year's. This common application will apply to infrastructure and economic development programs, services, both social services and public services, and arts and music programs. The new application this year is for special events, and this has been integrated into the community agency funding process this year. There's going to be questions. We're happy to assist you and walk you through the process, but you will have a specific application for special events. We do use an online portal. And when you access the application, there's going to be a question at the very top that's going to ask you if you want to fill out the common application or the special events application, and there you can choose and proceed with those questions. There are 2 funding sources for this process this year. We have funding from the federal government, from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, and then of course the City of Hayward's General Fund. I think the next slide, I will turn it over to my colleague, Rick, to go over the financial considerations.
Okay, well, thanks, Carol. And once again, good morning, and thank you everyone for attending. I just wanted to take a moment to go over some of the financial details as well as some of the reporting requirements. First of all, the minimum amount for most grants is typically going to be $10,000. Now, the reason I say minimum for most is because that minimum is not applicable to arts or music agencies. So if you are an arts or music agency, you can apply for less than $10,000. Typically, the grants are going to be somewhere in the $10,000 to $38,000 range. We do require a balanced budget when applying for a grant, as well as a demonstration of what all of your funding sources are going to be and what your expected expenses are going to be as well. In terms of when you will receive the funding, programs that are going to be funded through our CDBG funds will be receiving those reimbursements on a monthly basis. Those programs that are funded through the general fund will receive funds in 3 phases. The first half of the funds will be dispersed once the contract is executed. Then there will be an additional 30% when we receive the mid-year report, and the final 20% when we receive the year-end report. And I'll go into when those will be due on the next slide. Special events will get most of the funds, 90% of the funds, at the time of contract execution, because we realize you do need the money to have the event. And the remaining 10% will be delivered upon acceptance of an after-event report. Finally, the funds for this application process are during fiscal year 2024. So it's going to be between July 2023 and June 2024. Now, that was a lot to go through, so I am going to clarify some of the requirements around funding sources and disbursement and reporting timing. So again, with the community development block grant funding, the funds will be dispersed on a monthly reimbursement basis, and the funding will be due the reimbursement request will be due within 15 days of the end of the month. As for reporting, CDBG funded projects will require quarterly reporting. The reports will be due within 30 days of the end of the period, except for the final year-end report, which will be due on July 15th. For general fund funded programs, so services and arts and music, as I said before, the first half of the funding will be received once the contract is executed. There will be an additional 30% of the funding dispersed when we receive the mid-year report, and the final 20% when we receive the year-end report. As for reporting dates, so the mid-year report will be due within 30 days of the mid-year point, so January 30th, and no later than 15 days following for the year, no later than 15 days after the end of the year for the year-end report, so July 15th. Finally, for special events, as I said before, you will get the bulk of the funding, 90%, at the time of contract execution, and the final 10% will be dispersed with the post-event report, which should be delivered to us no more than 30 days after the event. And with that, I know that was a lot, but with that, I will pass it on to Carol.
Great, thanks, Rick. I just wanted to stop for just 1 second and to remind folks, we do have a Q&A feature. I know some people are using the chat to ask some questions, and we will have a time to answer these questions, but if you could utilize the Q&A function, that will help us kind of keep track of these questions and the answers, and we'll put together a Q&A or a FAQ at the end. So if you could kindly do that, that would be great. But I will continue with funding eligibility. I'll start with the common application applicants. For the common application, the applicants must be registered 501c3 nonprofits or have a fiscal sponsor, and I'll go into that in just a little bit. We do require that there is an independent fiscal audit that's been completed in the last 12 months if you are applying for more than $20,000. I'll take a second here just to kind of elaborate on this this fiscal audit. The city did hear back from some of our community partners, and we realized that a fiscal audit it may have a financial impact and maybe a hardship for some of our smaller nonprofits. And so as part of this year's community agency funding process review, the CSC and council did try to develop some alternative options. One of the things that they did from last year is they increased the threshold of an audit requirement from $15,000 to $20,000 to allow folks to apply for additional $5,000. And this was something that we heard from some of our agencies that were partnering with a fiscal sponsor, that the 10% of the grant that was given to the fiscal sponsor, may have created a hardship for them. So hopefully increasing the amount kind of can alleviate some of that burden. But also staff was directed to identify additional options to make available to our community partners. At this time, staff hasn't really identified a viable alternative, but we're still looking. We are constantly kind of doing research to find other ways that we can make this less burdensome, but also ensure that our subgrantees are using city funds in a fiscally responsible manner. And so when we have news, we will let you know of additional options. But right now, if you are applying for less than $20,000 and you can't meet the minimum contracting standards, you can still continue to work with another agency that can meet those standards as your fiscal administrator. And just to clarify, for some of you, this is old news, but for some of you, this may be new. If you do utilize a fiscal sponsor, they can utilize up to 10% of the grant for administrative costs. So if you have additional questions about that, please let us know. We are actively reaching out to some of our past fiscal sponsors to see if they're interested in providing this partnership moving forward. And so also another funding eligibility requirement is that applicants must meet the minimum contracting standards. That is clearly outlined in our RFP available online. So we do suggest that you take the time to go and look at the RFP, get that information. Our programs and services must serve low-income Hayward residents. And if you're applying for CDBG funds, you must meet a HUD national objective. And the 3 national objectives, just for review, is that you serve low-income Hayward residents, that you either address slum or blight, or your program addresses in an urgent need. Lastly, for special events and cultural events, like I had mentioned earlier, it's going to be a different application, but one of the funding requirements is that it's a free event. It must be a ticket list event and it must be open to the public. Again, if you have questions, we're happy to go over them at the end or use the Q&A function. At this time, I'll turn it over to my colleague.
Thanks, Carol.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about the special events funding. For those who have applied for CAF historically, you may be thinking this is a new category of funding, and it is. So a special event is any planned activity that requires the use of public property, which is not within the normal or ordinary use of the property, or any planned activity that may have a greater impact on city services or resources, neighborhoods, businesses, or the community as a whole than would have occurred had the activity not taken place. So think parades, gatherings, arts and craft shows, fairs, festivals, athletic events, car shows, music, and cultural events. Special events are required to obtain a special event permit, which is through the Development Services Department, or a fully executed facilities rental agreement through the Maintenance Services Department prior to receiving funding. And so just as a note of clarification, since we are looking at FY 23-24 funding, so events that will take place between July 1st of 2023 to June 30th of 2024, you don't need to get your special event permit prior to applying for funding, but you do need to get it prior to receiving the funding. So what this means is you can apply for funding and then receive funding, and then you need to apply for your development services, special event permit, or your maintenance services facility rental agreement funding. So there's 3 different categories of special events funding. This process, as I mentioned, is a new portion of the community services community agency funding process. Previously, special events funding was administered through the Economic Development Division, which economic development staff brought the following criteria to council in 2019 and council approved. So as I mentioned, there's 3 different types of special events funding. There's new events funding, signature events funding, and classic events funding. So new events are new events that may receive the new amount of funding for 1 year. It's defined as an event that has been newly established and has been initially developed within no more than 3 years of the date of the first grant request to the city. So an event that, if you've had this event previously outside of the city of Hayward and now you're bringing it to the city of Hayward, that's a new event. And new events can receive grants for up to $10,000. Signature events are events that have taken place less than 5 years from the current year of the grant request. So, the signature events can receive up to $5,000 in grant funding. And after the end of the 5th consecutive year of an event taking place, a signature event is then reclassified as a classic event. Classic events have taken place for 5 or more years. So we're happy to walk through this again, especially for agencies that are applying for special events this first year. and kind of walk through like the award amounts. We know it's new. We know there may be questions, so we're definitely here to support those.
All right, so I am going to talk a bit now about what the application looks like. This is an overview. I want to say, and I'll probably say this several more times, but all of the applications must be submitted online via City Data Services by 5 p.m. on the day that they're due, which, oh my goodness, Carol, what is the day that they're due? December 2nd, thank you. I had the 5 p.m. part, December 2nd. So again, citydataservices.net. If there was a question in the Q&A about passwords, if you need help getting that password set up, please reach out to us. So these are the different parts of the application. On the administration side, we ask that you put in your current contact information. It's really important that you're putting the contact information for the person who's going to respond to emails and who's going to know what this application is. Just putting the executive director of a large agency sometimes ends up in our communication not reaching the people it needs to reach, because those folks get a lot of email. Additionally, I believe 2 years ago, started asking, or last year was the first year, asking for agency-specific demographics. This is a request from our Community Services Commission. They're trying to apply a racial equity lens to this work, and they want a better understanding of the demographics of the agencies that we're funding. The eligibility piece, Carol walked you through what all of those eligibility requirements are, but there will be a point in the application to confirm that you have the audit and your nonprofit status. And again, agencies without an audit can apply for up to $20,000. The budget piece, there's a couple of things that we're looking for in the budget. We ask for an agency-wide operating budget. I know for some agencies, you're really big and this is a huge budget to include. For others, your program may be your agency budget, and that is completely okay too. But we ask for that agency-wide budget so that we can get an idea of the financial stability of the organization and to see where this program that we're funding fits into the larger picture. So then we ask for, again, the proposed program budget. And you'll see there's multiple columns, and one column is for your actual request from the City of Hayward. The other column gives you the opportunity to reflect any additional funding sources that you leverage. There was a question that we've answered in the Q&A about matching funds. We do not require any matching funds, but we do like to see, and our commissioners like to see, if you're leveraging other funding sources. So we strongly encourage you to include other revenue sources if they're supporting the program. And also, I realize there's a typo on here. It's not a DUNS number anymore, it's a SAMS number. We have to update that. In terms of the program piece, we'll look for the funding category. To the best of your ability, say which category you're looking to be in. We understand that sometimes things may shift, and we're happy to work through that with you. We ask for the demographics of the folks that have been served in your program prior to this in the previous fiscal year. And again, this is a similar request from our Community Services Commission to understand who the population is that's being served by the programs that are funded. The service type, you'll see that those are prevention services, responsive services, both or other. Again, to the best of your ability, we're looking for you to reflect on if your services are preventative, looking to helps to prevent the spread of illness, prevent homelessness, prevent food insecurity, or responsive, so providing medical treatment or something like that. And then your performance goals and measures. Oops, that was me somehow. Your performance goals and measures. With these, this helps our commission understand what you're looking to achieve and what the impact will be of the work. Then there will be some narrative questions. Each question has a 250-word limit, and this is your opportunity to really demonstrate your impact and your agency's capacity and reflect. There's a question that allows you to reflect back on any previous challenges. So for agencies that are previous award recipients, for example, if you weren't able to meet the performance goals that were in your contract last year and you want to give some context as to why, or if you want to share the ways that your agency is adapting, those are options to, current economic conditions or COVID recovery, that type of thing, you have the opportunity to share that story. If you are looking to apply for community development block grant funds, there are some subsequent questions there that we ask you to complete. If you're not sure if CDBG is the right fit for you, please still fill those out. There was a question earlier about if you can apply for both CDBG and general fund. You can. Staff does reserve the right to review your application and make a determination of best fit given the requirements of managing CDBG grants and the eligibility from HUD there. But if you're not sure, please fill them out. It's just a few questions. And then finally, there's a capital projects question. This is, should there be funds available that we don't anticipate? It's your opportunity to describe any potential capital projects that you would benefit from. So you're not actually submitting an application for them, you're just letting us know what's out there. Okay, the request for proposal packet, this was posted this morning to our website. Again, your application is to be submitted online, but we do provide this packet so that you have the written questions in advance. Please don't fill them out there and send them to us, submit them via City Data Services, but this is all the information that's in the RFP packet. So the funding process calendar and the overview of the funding process, which Jessica went over at the top, as well as our contracting and reporting standards, so you can know what to expect there, blank applications for reference, the special event guidelines that Jessica described earlier in there, the income limit. So this is specifically for our CDBG funded projects, so you can understand what the 80% AMI income limit is, low income census tract maps, which is to help if you want to describe where geographically you're serving to give us a better idea of who your population is. We have a template for the program budget. If you want to add, there's an opportunity in City Data Services to add other lines. So feel free to add other categories, but that's the template so you can see what we're looking for in terms of your requests versus the other agency or other funding sources. The scoring rubric, this is new this year, but this is how the CSC will be, how the ARCs will be evaluating your application. So you have that for reference going in. And then finally, a glossary of kind of the more frequently used terms and definitions to help if you have any questions about the terminology in the packet. And with that, I will turn it over to, I'm not sure who, but take it away.
Alejandro. Application submission, as Amy mentioned, the application deadline is December 2nd, 2022 at 5 p.m. No late applications will be considered. So if you're having issues, make sure to let us know before the 5 p.m. deadline. All application materials will be available after the bidders conference. So you should be able to go on to our website or go directly into citydataservices.net to review the application materials. As Amy mentioned, no paper applications will be considered. If you have already applied using City Data Services in the past, make sure to use your login and password. If you're new, use the provided username and password, and then you will be prompted to create a unique one. As Amy mentioned, if anyone is having any issues with their password, let us know. And if necessary, we can provide a Word version of the document, but again, it will not be the way you submit your application. You want to use citydataservices.net. Pass it on along to whoever's next.
Great. Thank you. So just to review the application timeline, as we've discussed, applications are due by Friday, December 2nd at 5 p.m. Following all the applications being submitted, city staff will review for completeness and eligibility. And then all those applications that are complete and eligible will be shared with the Community Services Commission for their online review. The interviews will take place across 2 Saturdays, Saturday, January 21st and Saturday, January 28th. We will do our best to let all agencies know what their interview time slot is in late December, early January. But for now, we do ask that you hold those Saturdays. And if you know already that you have a conflict, if there are other staff from your agency who can attend, that's fine. But those will be the dates where the interviews, when the interviews will be held. Following the committee interviews with the Community Services Commission, the funding recommendations will be discussed with the Community Services Commission and will be shared with Council for consideration. There will be a public comment period, and the final funding will be determined in May of 2023. The following are your staff for any technical assistance that you have following this presentation. Amy is your contact for Community Development Block Grant, Economic Development, and Infrastructure Facilities applications. Carol is your contact for Community Development Block Grant, Public Services. Alejandro is your contact for social services, arts and music, and paratransit funded agencies. And Rick is your contact for special and cultural events. We request that you fulfill the attendance requirements by completing the Bidders Conference sign-in sheet. There's a link here which we can drop into the chat as well. I know several of you have also introduced yourselves in the chat. So please do complete this link so that we can accurately represent the agencies who participated in this conference. So this is a federally mandated requirement that we include all the agencies that we've worked with through this process. So we thank you in advance for completing this. Staff, we've been trying our best to answer all the questions that have been coming in through the Q&A and live time. I know there's a few that we'll still get to. I did want to address one that came up earlier, which was, what's a gathering? And I understand there's a little bit of, we've had questions come up on what's the difference between arts and music agencies and special events agencies, and which one should you apply for? So for special events and cultural events, these are one-time events or pre-scheduled events that are open to the public, that are not part of the typical flow of what would usually take place. So a gathering, it's a little bit nuanced to describe, but again, open to the public. And so it can't be a private event. It's a free event. And really, I think the most important part is open to the public. And then for arts and music, those are ongoing programmatic services that have an impact on arts and music. So happy to discuss this more. Again, I understand it's nuanced. I'll pause there and see if there's, it looks like there may be an issue with the forms link. So if it doesn't work out, we'll figure something out, and staff are working on it as we speak. So I'm going to pause here, and if you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll select folks and unmute them.
Before we answer questions, I just wanted to let folks know, I'm going to export the email that you used when you signed into this bidders conference. And once we get the link working, we can send it to you. But at this time, we're still looking into why you can't access the link. But you don't have to worry about that now. We will fix it and we will get that to you so you can focus on the question and answer portion. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, my name is Frances Sagapolo, and I'm calling on behalf of the Kumahula Association of Northern California. I guess ours is would be under the new event category because we are actually moving an event from Pleasanton to the city of Hayward. This is where the event actually originated 40 years ago, but has been in Pleasanton for the last, 3 or so decades. And we want to move it back here. However, it's in May. Only is this because May Day is in May, but also it coincides with the Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And what would we do about that, since it's 1 month prior to, I guess, the fiscal year? Would we still be able to apply for the funds and then maybe pay for it, pay for our things up front, possibly on a credit card, and then get the funds and pay the credit card back? How would that work? And also my second question would be, since this does involve music, it's and culture, as well as, it's a cultural festival, but also involving music and the arts, would we be able to apply for 2 different sources of grants?
Great questions. I'm actually going to answer the second one first and then the first question. So we've gotten a lot of questions from folks about, can we apply for 2 different types of grants? Yes, you can apply for, we've had agencies apply for 1, 2, or 3 different types of grants. That being said, you cannot apply for both special events funding and arts and music funding for one single event. If you are having a one-time event, you can apply for the special events funding. If you are doing an ongoing education series on this type of service, then you could apply for arts and music events, but you can't layer funding for one specific event or program. And then the first question is a really good one, and it's something that we've worked with a lot of agencies on. This is funding that is for events that will take place between July 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2024. It can't be used for reimbursement for events that took place in the prior fiscal year. That being said, I will definitely reach out to you about kind of how to explore if there's ways to support this event this fiscal year while you apply for funding for next fiscal year as well.
Thank you. That helps. And can you kind of explain what this? Okay, so for this May Day event, of course, that is a one-time or an annual event. I assume that's also considered the one-time / annual event.
That's correct.
But this ongoing event, what would that be? Would that be like workshops? What exactly is the music art program?
So again, I'll reach out to you, and if there's anyone else who has this question, I think that probably a good way to get familiarized is to review some of the past agencies that have been funded through the arts and music category. It's things like in-school education presentations, funding for art galleries that provide free services in the public. So there's some resources that I'd be happy to share with you, and we'll definitely link on our website as well to give you a better idea.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jessica, I don't seem to have the ability to ask folks to unmute, but
Okay.
I think the next person in line is the person with the phone number that starts with a 510 area code and ends with 341.
It
Hello,
looks,
can you hear me?
yeah, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. I have some questions about the special event application.
Go for it.
If you're applying for a special event, do you need to fill out the common application?
Great question. If you're just applying for the special events funding, you just fill out the special events application. You don't need to fill out the common application.
Okay, I have a couple of other questions regarding special event. If you are doing special event, do you have to be a nonprofit with a fiscal sponsor?
Eligible applicants include nonprofits, government agencies, and for special events, as long as your event is free and open to the public and non-ticketed, then you don't need to be a nonprofit or a government entity. And for the fiscal sponsorship piece, I'm actually going to call on Carol. Are we requiring that of special events applicants? Is that an eligibility criteria consideration?
No, I think the funding amounts are, no, a fiscal sponsor is not required for special events.
Thank you.
And so to do a special event, can you be an individual putting together the event if you have experience in that, or do you have to be an organization?
You can be an individual as long as the event is free and open to the public.
Next question. Do you have a list of facilities available to hold the special event?
That is not something that our division is providing. So the event should really be set up. And again, because this is a new process, this is something that we've worked through that our division is not supporting like event design, event setup, or event marketing. We are supporting fiscal sponsorship for events.
Perhaps you can clarify for me. I thought I read somewhere that the special event needed to be held in a facility that would normally not have that typical flow of activity. So it does not have to be held in a City of Hayward facility?
Good question. If you are applying for the special events funding, you do need to receive either the special events permit or the facilities rental agreement. And this is, so that doesn't necessarily mean it'll be on City of Hayward, like in a facility or in the property. But if it does have that type of impact in the community, you would need to get either one of those applications or agreements set up.
Still a little cloudy, so it sounds like I need to get information regarding the special event permit, and the other one was called
facilities rental agreement. And I will also say that we've posted online special events guidelines. And so for the sake of time, I'd encourage you to take a look at that and then follow up with staff with any further questions around kind of these technical nuances so that we can make sure that you've got all your questions answered.
And last question is, can we, how do we sign in for bidders conference for call-in people?
I think we're still working on that. So we'll follow up once we have that information.
I'll just add, for those who are calling in, if we don't have a solution to the bidders conference Microsoft Forms working by the end of this meeting, I would recommend that you just email staff and we can certainly email it to you directly. Sorry about that, folks.
All right, I just think unmuted Martin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Martin Hanera from La Alianza de Hayward. I put on for a 503B nonprofit that puts on cultural events. In regards to submitting funding requests for what would be a signature or classic event after 5 years, I want to know about the fact that COVID interrupted my event. We've been putting it on for 37 years. Will that be an exception to the rule this year, since I typically put on my show around the closest weekend to May 5th every year? So will that be an issue this year, considering COVID has interrupted consecutive years?
So I think I'm following your question is kind of what bucket you fall into because of the interruptions and having hosted this event.
Well, I've been interrupted due to COVID.
Right.
So will I have an exception to that rule in terms of funding, since by the letter of the law and meaning, it hasn't been 5 consecutive years, but that was out of my hands due to COVID.
Of course. And we discussed this, that you know, I think what we're going to do is just, if you've had the event for, say, now 1 year, if you had it in 2021, then that would fall into that middle category.
Well, I've had it for 37 years.
Right, but then you didn't have it for a few years because of COVID.
Yes.
So then it would be a signature event.
Got it.
Yeah.
And what was my other question? And the same question that came up earlier, probably would need to speak to you due to the fact that this would be occurring in May. So the May event for the upcoming year doesn't fall under your targeted date. So I probably would need to speak to you and then get your insights and directives how to deal with it for May.
Yes.
2023, and I'd assume December 2nd deadline would be for May 2024.
That's correct.
Got it. And you would be the person that I speak to answer those questions?
Yeah, you can reach out to me, Jessica.
Got it. Okay, Jessica, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dorothy, and I'm with Treasures Unleashed. We conduct a youth empowerment performing arts program and community events. My question, I probably could have answered it, but I'm still going to ask just to get to clarify. So, if a person is seeking fiscal sponsorship, because I'm in the process of obtaining it, could I apply through that, or well, you do have different levels, so technically I could still, correct?
I'm sorry, I'm not following the question. Could you repeat it?
Okay, so the question is, I'm in the process of obtaining fiscal sponsorship, so I should have that done within a week or two. Can I apply under the new fiscal sponsorship, or
Got it. Thank you. Yes, you can apply under the new fiscal sponsor.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much my question. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Lawrence, can you hear us? Lawrence? All right. It looks like all the folks who still have their hands up are folks who have already asked questions. So if you still have a question, or if your question's been answered, can you please make sure to put your hand down? And if you still have a remaining question, we'll get to those folks once we've addressed all the new questions. I see Lawrence is back, so let's try and... Lawrence, can you hear us?
There we go. Okay, now I'm there, right?
Great, we can hear you.
Yes, can you hear me now? I hit the unmute button.
We can hear you, thank you.
Hello?
Can you hear us, Lawrence?
Yes, I do.
Great, go for it.
So it's real simple. Is our email our registration for this, or that's just where you're going to send the link for filling out the form?
hot off the press, everybody. I just dropped a new link into the chat. I can certainly email it to you via email if you'd like, but if everyone can take a look at the chat, we've dropped a new link. Someone has confirmed that it is working. We will also update the slides before we post it, so that information will be available as well. Thanks, Lawrence.
Okay,
Thank you, Lawrence.
thank you.
All right, let's see.
Hi, this is Jazz and Kamal with 56 Ava. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Hey, I don't have a question. I just wanted to just kind of let you guys know that you guys are doing great and you guys have organized this very well. And I look forward to applying and reaching out for any kind of support that I might need. So thank you guys.
Thank you so much. That's great to hear.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elena Lepe. Thank you for this opportunity for everyone. I work in the parent, one program in parent national education in the Hayward. So I have only for clarification. So do you have two funds? One is general funds for Hayward, another is federal funds. And the general funds for Hayward is can apply for music, art, and special event. That's correct.
There's also, in addition to general funds for arts and music and special events, there's also social services, in addition to those two that you mentioned.
Okay. I think it's only clarification. Thank you. Thank you for responding.
Sure. Is that the only question you had?
Yes. Yeah. For general funds, is for new event, right? Or depend. The federal funds. Sorry.
No, that's fine. New agencies and organizations can apply for any type of funding, and we will share that the reporting requirements and the invoicing requirements are more rigorous for the federal grant than they are for the general fund grant. So for federal grants, you have to request reimbursement on a monthly basis and complete 4 quarterly reports. For the social service grants, you receive 3 payments throughout the year, and you submit 2 progress reports annually.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for our work. Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks, Elena.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, just checking if there's any more questions.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Brown. I was calling or asking the question for, it was already answered, but I didn't really hear the answer. It was around the use of CDBG funding to lease office space and or mobile clinic space. Is that allowable? And then my second question was, in the RFP packet, is there a section or page which references allowable expenses and allocation of funding for the proposed budget?
I can take that one. Yeah, I answered it in the Q&A, but I had a bad habit of clicking answer live instead of typing my response. So I apologize for that confusion. In terms of the lease, under CDBG, long-term leases are an eligible activity as part of the acquisition of real property. I will tell you it's not something that has previously been funded by the city of Hayward, as far as I know. So it may not look familiar to our commission, so you need to, make a good pitch. And then the other piece, no, for CDBG in the packet itself, we don't go that in depth. But if you want to email me separately, I can link you to some of the more useful resources for CDBG in terms of eligible activities.
Okay,
and,
that's
and
okay.
expenses.
So it
specifically.
seems like for the office space, leasing office space, that's not allowable, and then mobile clinic space, that would be the same based on the long term.
Yeah, if it's a long-term lease, yes. And your other question was about the allowable expenses, right? I think I said activities. Yeah, if you send me that an email, I can put you in, give you the link. There's a really useful resource called Playing by the Rules, which is specifically for sub-recipient agencies of CDBG funds.
Okay.
So the folks who we give our money to, there's a whole HUD handbook for you. It's a lot of pages long, but it's useful.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Amy.
Yeah.
Winda, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you for having me. Winda Shimizu from Hayward Arts Council. I'm the director there. I have a question about art exhibitions, receptions. Are they considered under special events? And if you can define gatherings.
Sure. So special events are any event that is free and open to the public is eligible to apply for special events funding. Again, we encourage you to kind of review the special events guidelines and to see if it meets the criteria set forth, but it is definitely eligible to apply. And then for gatherings, it's a little bit difficult to define exactly. However, as long as your event is free and open to the public, that is we'll have a gathering of people. That's really how we're looking at what special events are.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have 1 minute left. I'm just going to see if there's any questions that still remain. For arts and there's a question around arts and music, if they're considered signature or classic events. The new signature and classic events are actually only for special events. They're not for arts and music agencies. There's a question around, will combined total grant amounts impact the need for audited financial records for the $20,000 threshold? Why don't you reach out to us specifically and we can kind of chat through. If anyone else is considering applying for multiple grants that then might trigger that $20,000 threshold, please also reach out to us. And I think we'll have to think about that one a little bit further. If there's any questions that we didn't get a chance to answer, feel free to reach out. Well, again, we're happy to go through it. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking your time to participate. The materials, the recording of this, the PowerPoint, the resources to past staff reports will all be linked on the website. And we can share that out with folks who signed up through the sign up link. Great. So again, thanks everybody so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and just can't reiterate it enough that if you have questions, feel free to follow up with staff, your designated staff who provides your technical assistance, myself. We're here to help, and we want to make sure that this is a seamless and easy process, as easy as can be for everybody. Thanks everybody. We're going to end the recording and the webinar now. And again, really appreciate your time.